How did my musical journey begin? Well, if it was official, it started with Slime and Family Stone. If it was just for fun and as a hobby, I started with a group called Windsong, which was my sister, a cousin, and we sang all over Sacramento, a lot of local talent shows. Well, there was one talent show that happened once a year with all of the high schools in Sacramento, and we won like 3 or 4 years in a row. And then I guess the entertainment bug bit me. So at 15 years old, my dad, who loves Slime Family Stone, took me to the Memorial Auditorium on J Street and to see Slime Family Stone. And I believe at that time, Santana was opening up. And then after the show was over, I had made a pledge to myself that one day I was going to be in a famous group. Needless to say, I didn't know that some years down the line that I would actually get that opportunity to meet Sly Stone when he was recording a new album and he needed some background singers. And a friend of mine who was a drummer, also from Sacramento, his name is Michael Samuels, took me to the record plant in Sausalito, California. And I did a recording session. And after the session was over, Sly said, "Welcome to Sly and the Family Stone." So officially, that's how it started.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What was the music scene like in Sacramento when you were starting out?
When I was a kid here, there wasn't that many outlets for us. Sacramento was different then. It was like interview I said earlier today was like the city of trees and family oriented. We went to the parks for William Land Park. We used to have this stage over there where everybody go over there and give our little summer barbecues, and we would pretend like we were entertainers and we would perform on that little stage. And a lot of church and school. I was in the All City Madrigals here in Sacramento. All City Madrigals were all of the high schools that came together. They picked 2 kids from each concert choir in each high school, and I was chosen. That was classical music, so I was the first Black female artist to actually sing lead for the All City Madrigals back in, God, what year was that? A long time ago. I think in the, what year is that? It's late 60s, I think, early 70s. And we sang all over all of the political functions and at the courthouses and at the Capitol building. We did that for a while. So I actually started singing classical music first in high school before I got to the Sly Stone stuff. So that's how it was here early. There wasn't a lot of outlets and stuff for music here in Sacramento. It was basically a law school. I mean, you can go to law school here. There was a lot of ways for people coming here if they wanted to be lawyers. Like my mother was in law enforcement too. That's what brought her here to Sacramento. But for as far as music, you had to leave here to either go to San Francisco or Los Angeles if you want to pursue a career in music.
And did you discover funk kind of like when you first saw Sly Stone, or had you heard of it before then, or how did that?
Sly Family Stone was my all-time favorite group in the whole world. And see what they did. They didn't just change Black music or R&B music. They actually were the pioneers that changed the face, the look, the sound of modern music, period. So I didn't realize it at the time. I was just a kid, but I had no idea. Basically the word on the street in Sacramento that Sly was the legendary street general. He was the innovator. He's the pioneer. It all began with him. And not just as far as Sly, he didn't do just funk. He did all genres of music with gospel and R&B and classical, and even a funky violinist, a classical violinist could find a place in Sly's funky equation. But with the funk, then of course James Brown was the godfather of it. I had a chance to actually meet him as well. But the nucleus of it all came together with Parliament Funkadelic when George Clinton and his P-Funk clones, he incorporated all those elements from Jimi Hendrix, that radical or hardcore rock bottom, I mean the bass bottoms, the funk bottoms of James Brown, the radical rock and roll heavy metal of Jimi Hendrix, and then of course the gospel R&B flavors of Sly Stone. He incorporated that all in together under one genre, basically one musical equation in it, basically what I call funk rock. And so that's where I kind of like got my credentials from Sly and George, and bringing it all together to a female group called the Brides of Funkenstein.
Yeah, yeah, I had kind of been looking into that because I was surprised that the Brides of Funkenstein didn't get bigger than when they did, you know?
Me too. Me too. Well, they should have been. But then, you know, of course, the Brides of Funkenstein came out during a time when females were pretty, you know, during that era were considered pretty much, if they were just as powerful or even stronger than their male counterparts, they were deemed a threat. So we were pretty much suppressed. They felt like, you know, we should stay in the back and sing background. And we were background singers even when we sang lead. So back in those days, it's just like it was okay for us to, for a lot of promoters or booking agents or even your production company or management company that you were signed to, we were just basically a commodity, so to speak, where they would get the money from the, you know, promoters, the booking agencies, and give us a percentage. And then we pretty much kind of settled for that. But when we started actually venturing out on our own and becoming self-sufficient and powerful women, and especially in as being Black females in a genre that didn't really exist at that time for funk rock. There is no category for funk rock then, and there's none even to this day. But that's basically what we were. And now, fast forward to 2023, my background and my basically the fans, and I call them funk soldiers, is basically young heavy metal rockers, funk rockers between the ages of 18 and 35 years old, and is predominantly white. So that's where we are right now. So I fit in really more comfortably, not saying that we still don't do R&B, because R&B is a flavoring in the music that we do, but we mix the R&B and the hardcore heavy metal in our music. And it's actually very powerful and it's doing well for us. It did well back then. We were suppressed because there were no outlets then, but they are now.
So tell us about your autobiography. Has it been in the works for a while? And what message did you kind of want to give to the fans?
I started writing this autobiography in the third grade. That was a long time ago. I had a third grade teacher who told me I had a flair for words, right? So of course I always got A in English, and to me, it was just a hobby. But when I started going out into the music industry, I realized that it was more of a challenge than I realized. You know, a lot of the pitfalls and things that you don't talk about when you're going in the music industry. When you're young, you just think about you want to be a celebrity or you want to be a part of a great group, or you seems like it's just so much fun being in that lifestyle, but there's no books to prepare you for the obstacles and the barriers that you're going to come across in that. And it's just the highs are the highs and the lows are the lowest. So when I told my mother at age 15 that I wanted to be a part of a famous group, she basically told me that, and she said exactly, you need to get that foolishness out of your head. She says, you're too nice, you're too soft, there's too many sharks out there, they're going to eat you up alive. So she says, there's nothing to prepare you for that lifestyle. So as I started writing my book, I realized I had written a book that does have a semblance that can prepare women or anyone who think they want to go into that industry. Now there is a blueprint, there is a book that you can read to prepare you for that lifestyle. And I didn't realize it until I finished writing that book and read it all from cover to cover. Because like I said, I wrote it since the third grade, and it was basically kept me grounded. It was my life source, that whenever I was faced with some really traumatic things in the music industry, I would hurry and go write it down, and it would calm myself down, because I couldn't explain it just like how we're talking one-on-one. It was just, it was best said on paper. And then one day I started putting it all together. And then when I read it and I finished it, I was like, oh my God, look what you have here. So I was being selfish because I kept it to myself for years, many years, and I saw a lot of people struggling and not understanding the pitfalls of being in that industry, and that's why I released it, so that maybe I may inspire or encourage or help someone to better prepare themselves to make better choices in the industry if they decide to go into that field. That's why I wrote it. Long story.
Oh no. What was it like playing with Sly Stone and P Funk and also the Brides of Funkenstein?
Woo! It was the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. You know, it was a musical whirlwind. It was like going to Disneyland every single day. It was just like I work with some of the most greatest thoroughbreds and musicians in the world. You're starting with Eddie Hazel. I want people in this book to know who Eddie Hazel was. He was like a guitar god, one of the greatest funk rock guitarists you could ever imagine. And from Plainfield, there was Bernie Worrell, who had credentials from Juilliard, keyboardist, monster keyboard player. There was Michael Hampton, Boogie Masson, and the list and list, Gary Scheider, and all of these musicians that no one would ever probably know about them until I wrote this book. Some of the most incredible singers and songwriters, a guy named Junie Morrison from the Ohio Players, and Felipe Wynn, who was singing on a lot of the songs called Knee Deep, one of my favorites, from the Spinners. And it's just that there's so many talented individuals that came through that group and basically were just monster musicians. I wrote all about them too, not just what the females did, because they actually helped to create that whole wall of sound, vocal sound that a lot of groups emulated, and groups like the Vanity Six and TLCs and the Mary Jane Girls, and all of these groups basically emulated from a female group that no one knew about. We were always anonymous. So the Brides of Funkenstein were not only just those 4 females in that group, there were also 3 others that came from our sister group called Parlette. And these 7 women were basically the vocal wall of sound that actually catapulted Parliament Funkadelic to another dimension. So that's another reason why I wrote the book.
That's definitely good, for sure. What are your some of your favorite memories from that time period?
The time period with P Funk, or which time frame?
Both Sly and also with P Funk.
The memories that I have during that time frame from 1974 was my first recording session. Was the strongest memory I have is hearing my voice on a song mixed in with other females, sounding like one chord structure, the perfect vocal blend. I think I never knew what that was until I went into a recording studio for the first time to work with Sly's Girls, which a group called Little Sister, which was Sly's little sister and 2 others. I didn't even realize what an honor that was to sing with this until actually I had finished singing with them. Another time is when I was on stage with Parliament Funkadelic, and there used to be this spaceship that landed on stage, right? It was a big old mothership. And I was standing on stage and I was hearing this, I was feeling like water dropping on me, like feeling drops of water from me. And I looked up and I realized I was standing under the jets of the mothership. So that was another experience, watching this $275,000 spaceship land on stage. And I didn't realize that where I was standing, I needed to move because it had all this dry ice coming from it, right? With the water dripping, and it was dripping on the back of my neck. I said, what the heck is that? Yeah, when the mothership landed and I was standing, that was another, amazing experience in my career that I can remember.
Also, you were also part of the Black Panthers.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I had a short stint with the Black Panthers. I had my fiance, who's a very was, God bless his soul, he passed away, was a very prominent figure in this town. His name was Judge James Long, Superior Court judge down in Sacramento. I met him years ago, gosh, maybe 1970. What year was that? 73, I think it was 73 or 74. And he was Huey Newton's and the Black Panthers lawyer. So he actually took me down there to meet them one afternoon. I mean, I dibbled and dabbled in the Black Panthers. It gave me a sense of identity back then. We didn't have that when we were growing up, you know. Our way of kind of fighting back for any kind of injustices that we felt like. I really didn't understand the theory of the Black Panthers until I got in the organization. But yeah, I was there for a short time and got a chance to meet Huey Newton and went to some of the Panther meetings back in the day. But I met him through Judge Long, who he actually exonerated some Panthers here in Sacramento. There was a case that goes way back with the Oak Park Four is what they called them. And I met him during that time frame through my mother, who also was doing a lot of political and legal things back in those days as well, with the breakfast programs and the food banks, when raising money for homeless children and homeless, you know, troubles with in the community. That's what my mom did. So I met the judge through my mom, and then the judge introduced me to the Black Panthers.
How was it with the Black Panthers?
My experience, short-lived. I guess you would have to read it in my book. With I actually got kidnapped by two of them and held hostage. And so I did write about it in the book. And then Sly Stone actually saved me. He was my hero. He saved me. So my experience with a couple of them wasn't that great, but and because I could talk about it now after all these years, because I suppressed it, and then I did talk about it in the book, not taking anything away from the Black Panthers, because they were a strong influence on, I believe that the Planned Parenthood is we still have Planned Parenthood today because of the Black Panthers. No one talks about that. But for my experience, I just ran into two of the wrong guys that you know, I had to escape. So I think that's a great story in the book that I wrote about, and I did survive with the help of Sly Stone.
And how can people buy a copy of your books?
You go through dawnsilva.com, www.dawnsilva.com, and you can get The Funk Queen. Yes, you can. That's simple. Pretty soon it probably will be on other outlets and things like that. But for now, because it is here it is, 544-page table book. It weighs 7 pounds. I mean, you can do weights with it, and you know, it's really, really heavy. But even if you don't want to read it, it's got some great pictures. And that's a whole nother story how I got these pictures too. From some of the reviews I've got, you know, they say the pictures leap out at you. I tried to put pictures that match the stories that I'm writing about. Table books, coffee table books are very, very expensive, but I had a publishing companies, a bunch of them telling me that they don't do them anymore. So, but for me, if someone tells me I can't do anything, then I was like, I try to prove them wrong, and I did it, and I'm doing it once again with the what I wrote about in the book. But that's why I called it the Funk Queen, right? And don't, you know, I don't want people to get the wrong impression about it. It goes far deeper than just funk, because the funk has all derivatives, as we talked about earlier, of all the elements of music. So yeah, that's how you can get my book, through dawnsilva.com. And it comes directly to me. I have a staff of about 4 or 5. It's a brand new company. I self-published, and it's selling way beyond my expectations. It's doing extremely well, especially for those here in Sacramento. They are buying most of them. So friends, I have a lot of friends and family in this city, and they are just really showing me a lot of love and supporting me big time.
And the coffee table book is a limited edition, right?
Yes, sir. I did 1,500. Everyone keeps telling me that I should do more. We'll see what happens after we get past these 1,500. We'll see. But for now, the only way you can get it is you can get it from me. And it is a classic. If it does come out, I will tell you that it won't be in the same format. It'll probably have a lot less pictures and probably going to be edited down. It is extremely expensive, I said, to manufacture when I had to do it, but I kind of did this for, like to put that message out there. Basically, when somebody tells you you can't do something, or basically when somebody tells you that an art form does not exist, it's not marketable, it's not going to happen, forget about it. When somebody tells you when you have your dreams and aspirations that it cannot happen, I'm a living proof that it can. So what I did is actually decided to publish the book myself, and that way you have the freedom to actually write whatever you choose, without to make sure that you get your message out. And I think that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, I think so. I do.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to talk about?
I think you did really good. Yeah. There's always plenty of things to talk about, when you have a book. And it's not just about the music too. I talked about so many different things. I talked about my lineage. I talked about my Afro-Euro indigenous bloodline. I went back to the 15th century in this book about the Acadian French that were exiled from London because they refused to bend the knee to the Queen. So they got kicked out and went over to Nova Scotia and Quebec. And they migrated to Louisiana in the 1700s. That's how far back this book goes. That's on my dad's side. Then on my mom's side, I talk about my great-grandfather who was 100% Native, who his family escaped, I believe, from the Trail of Tears, is what she said, and moved up to the Smoky Mountains along the North Carolina border and lived up there in the Bluffs and the mountains until he was 12 years old. So I talk about that as far as where I came from, so the readers will actually really know that when I say I started writing this book in the 3rd grade, I did. And I've been tracing my ancestral heritage since I was a little kid from the stories that both my parents told me. And maybe that might encourage others, not from all genres, from all races, from every, to go and trace their history, because it's a lot deeper than they can even imagine. I didn't realize how complex our bloodline was until I actually did the research. And so I wrote about that briefly and how it led up to how it's all connected with the music as well. You're talking about the early minstrel, African music of minstrel and African music. I talk about that too. Basically, back in the 1700s, they actually didn't pay any attention to the African minstrel combination because they thought it was a little primitive. And I actually researched that and found that out too, based on what my dad said. And it's true. So you start fast forwarding to the Stephen Fosters and the old Black Joes, and I Dream of Jeannie with the light brown hair. That was all infused into coming into the country and Western market. And so, yeah, there's all of this in here. Bits and pieces of all this is sprinkled into this autobiography that I talked about as well. And I also we want to talk about here when my mom, when I went home and the first gold album, platinum was, I think that's on the other side of the room, but was called the placebo syndrome and one of those, Funkadelic, Funkadelic, and versus the placebo syndrome, and a song called Flashlight that actually I believe was like a funk anthem. That Flashlight single went gold, and then the platinum. And then I went to the 500,000 gold over here. That was the Parliament Live. That's the one where I made my debut performance. And then, of course, I have a couple of Gap Band albums which are not on the wall. They're scattered out through the house, but I'm kind of running out of wall space for them. So yeah, I'm so proud that my journey I picked up a lot of platinum and gold records along the way. And then Parliament Funkadelic also is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so one part that does, I want to put out there that all of the men were, but that were in the group, but none of the women. None of the females were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, nor the Lifetime Grammy Awards. All the guys were, none of the women. That's another reason why I wrote the book, to talk about that they should have, because those women, 7 of us, created a wall of sound that many, many groups emulated over the years. So I'm so proud that I do have the gold and platinum albums to put on my wall to pass down to my children and their children and their children's children.
I hadn't heard that you guys weren't inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Grand.
The guys were, all of the musicians were, all of them were, not a single female. That's another, I keep forgetting that that's one of the inspirations that I had to decide to write my book, is to talk about that. And it's not just those 7 women who sang on all of those hit records. There's a whole lot of female groups or female artists that sang on a truckload of records that didn't get their just dues. And so I just felt like if the musicians and the guys can get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, how come the women did not? And I think it's time for someone to speak out on it, and that's what I did.
Well, hopefully they correct that slight, because I do think that it needs to be corrected for sure.
Absolutely. I would like it to be done sometime in the near future. I would look forward to that.